we're going to have Hope Reeves come and introduce the guest speaker for this year's annual Heritage Banquet. And following Hope, the next voice that you will hear will be that of our guest speaker.
Asha Wilkerson is an educator, attorney, and speaker who equips emerging leaders with the tools they need to make a difference in their lives and in the world around them. When colleges and universities want to show their student leaders how to develop into agents of change, they often turn to Asha. Naturally curious with a servant's heart, Asha has always made professional choices that allowed her to be of service to others. While pursuing her Juris Doctorate at the University of California at Hastings College of Law, her passion for assisting in the growth and empowerment of undeserved communities all over the world was ignited. She supported legal teams at the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees in Costa Rica and the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in Netherlands. Her focus on human rights led her to work, study, and teach in other countries, such as Haiti and Cuba. A few years after law school, Asha opened up her own practice, the Wilkerson Law Office in Oakland, California. This gave her an opportunity to educate her local community about their rights pertaining to employment law and small business ownership. For her efforts, she was recognized by Super Lawyers magazine as a Northern California rising star for 4 consecutive years. Driven by a desire to affect change on a deeper level, Asha minimized her practice to enter academia full-time after years of teaching as an adjunct professor. She currently serves as the director and department chair of the Legal Assisting Program at American River College in Sacramento, California. In this role, she revels in showing students how to explore, design, and thrive in careers within and beyond the law. As a speaker, Asha brings to the table a powerful blend of her diverse experiences as a legal professional and educator. She is known for delivering insightful presentations and a speaking style that is inspiring, honest, and relatable. Apart from her work to impact communities, she can be found pursuing her love of adventure by traveling the world and learning new languages. I present to you, Asha Wilkerson.
Let's see, I got to make sure I speak loud enough you can hear me over the rain that is competing with all of us tonight. So thank you, Hope, for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, College Hill. Thank you for continuing the legacy of my grandfather, Samuel Bailey. Thank you for the contributions financially to the scholarship fund. Thank you for the students who applied to the scholarship. And thank you for allowing me to be here to share this evening with you tonight. So first, I will start out with, who was Sam Bailey? Some of you in this room know him, but many of you have just heard about him, and I'm delighted to share more about him with you. Sam Bailey was born on January 11th, 1915 in Union Church, Mississippi. He was the son of Josephine Whalen and Pearlie Bailey. He grew up with 4 brothers on a farm that raised chickens and hogs. And the farm was so far away from town that it took half a day's wagon ride just to get to the city. Now, I don't know about you, but I cannot imagine sitting in a wagon drawn by a horse or a mule for half a day just to get to town and then to get the stuff and turn right around and sit for another half a day just to go back. That's how Big Daddy grew up. Now, to me, as you've heard me say, Sam Bailey was Big Daddy. That's what all of his grandchildren called him, and he was my, I'm not supposed to cry 2 minutes into the speech. He was my favorite person. I put my tissue here because I knew this was going to happen. Okay. Big Daddy was the kind of person who encouraged you with his words, loved you through his actions, and made you feel welcome no matter where you came from. He was that guy who put on every piece of clothing that you gave him for Christmas. So we have pictures of him in an orange tie, a purple t-shirt, and probably some red basketball shorts, because that's what his grandchildren gave him, and he wore those items proudly just to show you that he loved you. Now, only some of you will understand what I'm about to say next, but do you remember those big old cars in the 80s and the 90s? I feel like some of them were probably as big as this stage, right? And they had one bench in the front seat and one bench in the back seat that went from the driver's side door to the passenger side door. They didn't have bucket seats where you have a middle console where you can put stuff in. They just had one long bench. And I remember every summer when I would come home, I would get in the middle. My mom would be on the right side and Big Daddy would be behind the wheel. And before we could even get out of the driveway, I would slide to the left. And I would slide over again. So I would just force him to put his arm around me because that's how close I wanted to be to him. Sam Bailey's love extended beyond the tight-knit circle of his immediate family and his grandchildren. It encompassed the neighborhood children, the neighborhood adults, and the people of this nation. I'm still amazed at how many people I come across, even today, that talk fondly of him, even after he died 24 years ago. That's the kind of presence that he had. Big Daddy was not only a safe space for people, but he was also a man who took action, placing his life on the line to give all of us a chance at freedom and to be free and educated in the United States of America. This is why this scholarship is apropos of his passion and drive, and why you, students, are the beneficiaries of a dream that was realized long before you got here. I've known for a long time that I was going to be standing here before you tonight, and I've been thinking, praying, and meditating on what would Big Daddy have me say tonight. And I think I've got it down to about 3 points. The first one is to dream big without limitations. The second is to make a plan. And the third is to do the work. So pat yourself on the chest and say, dream without limitations. Go ahead and do it. Say it again. Dream without limitations. Say it like you mean it. And there you go. Now, Big Daddy grew up in a legally segregated nation. Now, today we know that there are some parts in the U.S. that we still just shouldn't go, some parts of Jackson that maybe we still shouldn't go, but we have a legal right to go where we want to go and to be who we want to be. But that wasn't the case when Big Daddy grew up. He not only didn't have actual freedom, but he didn't have the legal freedom to go and be who he wanted to be. As a child, he witnessed his father abducted in the middle of the night by the KKK for a business deal gone wrong with Big Daddy's brother, Uncle Big Bailey. The KKK realized that Big Daddy's father didn't have any information and that Uncle Big Bailey had already left the state to go to St. Louis. And fortunately for the family, they returned my great-grandfather to the house. He was physically okay, but traumatized nonetheless. In Big Daddy's youth and well into adulthood, he saw black people's efforts to vote frustrated time and time again. He could not sit in the front of a bus or a train. He could not drink from the same drinking fountain as white people. And he could not send his children to the same schools or to the best schools in the area. Now, even through all of this trauma, I would unequivocally say that Big Daddy had a wonderful life. He had a life full of rewarding relationships. He had a wife who loved him, children who adored him, and a community that supported all of his efforts. Although all three of Big Daddy's children attended the then segregated Jim Hill High School. Any Jim Hill grads in the house? Besides these? Yeah, all right, Jim Hill. Big Daddy wanted his children and the children of Jackson to have equal access to education and to have more options and educational opportunities than he had growing up. So now, the second step is to write the vision and make it plain. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, write the vision and make it plain. Now tell your other neighbor, because they need to hear it too. All right. It is one thing to have a dream or a vision, but it is quite another to turn that vision into a reality. In order to make that transition, you have to write the vision and you have to make it plain. Big Daddy spent countless hours with friends and other civil rights leaders envisioning a better future and making a plan for how it would come to fruition. They wanted an end to segregation, they wanted a land where black people could vote freely, and they wanted equal educational opportunities. One of the things that I think we've lost along the way as we move farther and farther from the civil rights movement is that we forget how united we all were. So Rosa Parks, everyone has heard of Rosa Parks, but she wasn't just a woman who decided to sit down by herself and not give her seat to a white man, but the action was planned, right? She had the support of the NAACP. She was chosen to be that person because she was the best suited plaintiff to bring the lawsuit all the way up through the Supreme Court. In addition, the black community supported her efforts and boycotted the buses for over a year until the laws changed. They had a vision. They had a plan. Remember when I said that voting was a challenge for black people? The 15th Amendment that gave non-white and freed male slaves the right to vote had been enacted, but it was difficult for black people to actually engage and activate the right to vote. There was this thing called a poll tax, a fee that you had to pay to register to vote, which is now a semi-distant memory. I've never had to pay to register to vote. But the fee was high enough that most black people couldn't afford it, and in some counties, they would make you pass a literacy test. And in some counties, the literacy test was to recite the entire Constitution. Now, most people can't tell me how many amendments there are to the Constitution. I had to check in front of my students the other day. And most people don't know the preamble, but to be able to recite the entire Constitution to be able to vote, ridiculous. The NAACP, along with Big Daddy, and Medgar Evers, of course, and a man named Reverend George Lee, were advocates for the right to vote. Reverend George Lee was a leader of the Belzoni branch of the NAACP. He went to register to vote, and the sheriff, and he actually had the money to pay, and the sheriff refused to accept his poll tax. That resulted in a lawsuit filed on Reverend Lee's behalf with the support of the NAACP, and ultimately he became the first registered African-American voter in that county, but not without its consequences. Following a rally or a gathering on May 7th, 1955, Reverend Lee was shot to death in his car at a stoplight. Now, I don't know about you. I do know that some people turned and ran the other way, which of course is understandable, right? People were actually losing their lives, but not Big Daddy and not Medgar and not a number of other people. In fact, not only did Big Daddy stay the course, but he and Medgar decided to dress up as sharecroppers to go to Humphreys County, which Belzoni is in Humphreys County, to investigate the death of Reverend Lee. And they had to dress up as sharecroppers, as farmers, one, to gain the trust of local people, but two, so they could go under the radar of the police and the FBI, who were supposedly investigating the death of Reverend Lee. As a result of their investigation, they had about 5 credible suspects and witnesses, but even to this day, justice has not been served. Nobody has been charged. At home here in Jackson, Big Daddy had faithfully and tirelessly committed to registering people to vote. He would stand outside the bus station, and any black person that he saw get off the bus, he would say, "Are you registered to vote?" And if they said no, he would take them down to the courthouse to register. It was also common knowledge that if you needed to register to vote, you could ask him on his 2 days off. So he worked 5 days a week for the railroad, had 2 days off, and on those 2 days, he would literally go door to door asking people if they were registered to vote, and he would take them to the courthouse. Now, I don't know about you, but I have one of the most flexible full-time working schedules I have ever seen in my life. I don't have any children, and I am 35, and I'm already tired. I can't imagine anybody else asking me for any more of my time. So thinking about the commitment and the energy that Big Daddy gave to the cause, to me, is impressive. But Big Daddy had a vision, and he had a plan. As a result of Sam Bailey's tenacious and unrelenting pursuit of justice, he received death threats that resulted in neighborhood members and members of the NAACP taking shifts to watch over his house and family throughout the night. In fact, his house was right here on Florence Avenue, 1502, and we're standing at 1600. Excuse me. Big Daddy had 3 children, Shirley, Thomas, and Verna. My uncle is not here tonight, but my auntie and my mother are sitting right in the middle along with the rest of my family. And he wanted them to have access to public spaces and to education. Now, my mom can tell this story much better than I can, but as the story goes, my mom and some friends were walking through the Jackson Public Zoo. My mom was, and still is, an avid reader and used to keep her journal all the time, and so the zoo was a relaxing place for her. And, you know, as is normal when you start walking around, she and her friends got tired, and they saw a park bench. But the understanding was if there wasn't a sign that said for coloreds, that black people could not sit down. But being bold and knowing what her rights were, my mother decided to sit down. And it couldn't have been more than 5 or 10 minutes before the police force came and arrested her, threw her into the back of a paddy wagon, and it's like a police van. If you're not sure, a police van, threw her in the back of a police van, and put her in jail with all of these adults. Now, I can't imagine being a fly on the wall when Big Daddy received the phone call that his daughter had been arrested for sitting on a bench. But I can tell you that he raised holy hell. And he went down to the police station and got in the police chief's face. He told that man, if you don't want my daughter to sit down, you better take out every bench from this here zoo. And as the story goes, the next day, you couldn't find not one bench in the Jackson Zoo. Later on, Big Daddy would be the named plaintiff on a landmark Supreme case that desegregated public transportation facilities across the nation. As a result, his children and all of us can now drink from any fountain, use any restroom, and sit anywhere and on any train, bus, or airplane. Later, Big Daddy would also go on to file the lawsuit, or be a part of the lawsuit that desegregated public schools right here in Jackson, Mississippi, and he watched proudly as his fearless child, Verna, became the first African-American woman to desegregate the University of Mississippi. Yeah. Big Daddy had a plan, and he had a vision. Now, the last point is you have to do the work to make the dream a reality. The last step is arguably the most challenging, right? Because dreaming, we can do that. Making a plan, you can write stuff down, but then you have to actually do the work. I don't think that as we sit here today, I know that I can, as I sit here today, I cannot fully comprehend the sacrifices that Sam Bailey made for his family and his community. I can't wrap my mind around it because I live in the world that he envisioned, or more akin to the world that he envisioned than the world that he actually grew up in. So young people, as you begin to take these next steps in your life, you will have countless opportunities to shape your future. Despite our world of instant gratification and overnight success, there really is no such thing. When somebody pops up as the new YouTube celebrity, they don't actually show you the 12 to 15 years of hard work that they put in before they got there. And it's easy to look at our role models and see where they are, but not understand the path or understand even where they started. The path to success is all about trades and sacrifices, and it is not linear. It goes up and down. We can all tell you because we've all been there. You can have it all, but probably not all at the same time. So what are you willing to give up now so that you can realize your dream later? Sam Bailey sacrificed his sense of security and his safety. He put his literal freedom on the line and put his life in jeopardy repeatedly to make his dreams of voting rights, freedom, and education true for his people. Now, I'm by no means telling you that you have to put yourself in harm's way, but you will certainly be required to make sacrifices. In reality, you're going to sacrifice one thing for another anyway. If you go to that party, you may not be well rested for that test. But if you go to that test, you may not have fun at that party. It's all about trades, right? It's all about balance. You can have it all, but maybe not all at the same time. Be clear in your vision and analyze each choice before you make it. Is this decision going to bring me closer or take me further away from my goals? As a high schooler, I can tell you that my dream was to play college basketball, and then I later tacked on that I was going to play professional basketball overseas. I was that kid who started goal setting before I even knew that goal setting had a term or a name. I distinctly remember writing on a piece of paper in 8th grade that I was going to earn a college scholarship for basketball. And after seeing the movie Love and Basketball, has anyone seen that? Am I dating myself? Okay, good, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. After seeing Love and Basketball, that's where I got the idea that I was gonna play professionally in Spain. I worked hard in high school and I ended up earning a full ride to Santa Clara University. I packed my bags and started school, but before the season began, I got cut from the team. See, the coaching staff that recruited me, the entire coaching staff, left and went to another school, and the new head coach that came in decided I wasn't good enough to be on her team before she had even seen me play. I was devastated, but I also realized that my dream wasn't so much about playing basketball. It was about getting a college education, using basketball as my tool to get there. My family and I appealed the coach's decision, and the university honored my scholarship for the remaining 3 years. I still had to work for it, but I was there, and I wasn't going to let them take the thing that I had earned, right, a college education, away from me. Now, not playing basketball afforded me the opportunity to explore opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have had time for. So I was sitting in a Black Student Union meeting that I wouldn't have had time for when the dean of admissions from the law school, who happened to be a Black woman, came in and told us all about this pre-law undergraduate scholars opportunity where we would have a month, 4 weeks of law school courses. We got to go visit courthouses and judges and nonprofits and legal entities. And she invited all of us to apply, and she even said, I'll pay you if you guys get into the program. And I thought, why not? You know, 4 weeks, and I get paid to go. As a result of that program, I felt confident enough to apply to law school. And when it came time to make the decision between, am I going to go and be a high school English teacher, I was an English major and communications minor, or am I going to go to law school? I made the choice to go to law school because I thought that would give me a greater opportunity to affect change. Now, there's a saying to be stubborn about your goals, but flexible about your methods. Remember, I wanted to travel the world playing basketball. Well, I can tell you I've definitely traveled the world. That was the goal. But my path looked completely different, more different than I ever could have imagined. I worked really hard in undergrad and ended up finishing my requirements a quarter early. We were on the quarter system. And as a result, I got to study abroad in Cuba. In spring of my first semester of law school, I traveled to Haiti as a part of my law school's human rights delegation, tasked with the mission of investigating and writing about human rights violations. My first summer of law school, I took a summer school course in Costa Rica, where I interned with the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees. And in my last semester of law school, I studied abroad in the Netherlands and interned for the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. I had a dream, I made a plan, and I worked hard to be available for the opportunities that would help me fulfill my goals. The work that I was putting into my plan prepared me for the opportunities to come, even though they weren't the opportunities that I was expecting. So, as I wrap up, I want to encourage you in your pursuit of excellence. Remember to dream big and without limitations. Not everybody will understand your dream, but that's okay, because they're not the ones who gave it to you. Write your vision and make it plain. Sketch out a plan of action and start with the end goal in mind and then figure out what the steps are that you need to be able to get there. It's easier to work backwards, and everything, I believe, is achievable with a plan. Lastly, don't be afraid to do the work. Life is hard, life is challenging. You're gonna work either way, so you might as well work hard working towards your goals instead of working away from them. On behalf of the Bailey family, Thank you.